Oregon against Texas Tech on Thursday. It's Dante Moore against Baron Morton. I know who I would rather have. Does Chris Level agree? This is a crossover edition of Locked On Ducks and the Locked On Red Raiders.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, it is that time for a crossover edition of Locked On Ducks. I'm Spencer McLaughlin, and Locked On Red Raiders, he is Chris Level, and it's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all so much, especially our everydayers, for helping make that the case. What's Oregon's biggest advantage in this game? What is Texas Tech's biggest advantage in this game? We shall find out on a show that is brought to you by our friends over at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Chris, I like Dante Moore a lot. So too do a lot of NFL draft scouts at this point in time. And if I'm Texas Tech's defensive staff, I am scouring the Indiana film and figuring out how do I recreate that scenario. The reason, though, despite that game existing, and on the other side, Baron Morton hasn't lost a game starting for Texas Tech this year, and I think Baron Morton's good. I'm really glad Oregon has Dante Moore because I have seen a steady progression from him throughout the course of this year. With the time to prepare, I think he and Will Stein and the offensive line are going to be ready for those sorts of tricks and gambits on the defensive side of the ball, and I think Oregon has the quarterback advantage in the Orange Bowl.
And I think a lot of people agree with you because I think that people see that this is the one quarterfinal game that I don't know if there's another one that exists where either one of these two teams could go win the whole thing. I don't know if another quarterfinal game, if people realistically think Bama that can't run the football, Ole Miss without a whole bunch of coaches and just the chaos that is, or if Miami is got enough to ultimately win three more games and ultimately play a home game. But I think these two teams could end up being back in Miami. One of them, whoever wins it. But I think a lot of people feel like that this is a very close game, and I've seen a lot of people picking Oregon, and I think that's Oregon's a small favorite, and I think that's what's helped them justify that pick is like I think Oregon they got a bit of an edge at the quarterback battle, maybe even a big edge. I don't know, and this is an easy argument to make if that's what you're for, because, well, one guy's like a potential NFL draft pick, maybe even a top draft pick. The other guy's been banged up all year. Do you realize that Baron Morton has started and finished only 4 games all season? Now, some of that because of a few injuries or, hey, pulling them out. But a lot of that is because they've just been hammering people that he hadn't even played in the second half or the bulk of the second half. Weird. That's how little he's technically played, and so his numbers aren't gaudy or anything like that. But I'm fascinated to see what version, really of Moore too, but what version of Baron you get, because he's had a broken bone in his leg the entire season, and this was I think people were going to tell you, hey, really to have it heal, it needs to be 6 weeks. No activity. Well, guess what? You're playing football. That doesn't exist. So you've kind of piecemealed it, a half here, a bye week there, another bye week there, and then you win a Big 12 title game. You earn a bye, and so So I just think he'll be more, a little more juice there, and his ability to kind of scramble around. And what's ironic about this whole conversation that people that would have no idea about Spencer and I talking about this is, There were a lot of naysaying about Texas Tech in general back this summer, and a lot of it had to do with Baron and how many good quarterbacks are in the Big 12. Sam Leavitt, Sorsby, Hoover, Avery Johnson. I mean, there was all this long list of Heisman candidates and all this stuff back in the summer. And my man Spencer was one of the very few people out there that not only gave credit to Baron Morton then, but is now, because he's been a guy that believed in Baron and liked Baron and saw Barron for what he was and all that. So it's just kind of an interesting irony that here we come full
You're, of course,
here.
referring to my alter ego, the Locked On College Football host, neutral arbiter of all things in the sport.
Well, yes, but
yes, of course.
But you're the same person, and you have the same football beliefs.
Highly debatable. Highly debatable.
Yes.
Chris, I want to dive into something that you touched on in there.
Okay.
It doesn't strike me, because the Utah game was a lot closer than the final score indicated. But for Baron Morton and the offense specifically, is there any amount of concern? I had to avoid saying your last name there because that would have been too easy of a pun. Is there any amount of concern on the Texas Tech side of things that they haven't had to go out and make that drive late in the game? Because I think this is going to be a close, competitive football game. I really do. And I like Oregon's chances. I don't think you're ridiculous for picking Texas Tech to win in any way, shape, or form. I think Texas Tech would rather this game maybe not come down to a situation that they just haven't been in, which is something to their credit because they've been beating the living crap out of everybody, whereas Oregon has had the Washington game the last time before James Madison they took the field. 3rd and 9 on the road, hostile environment. Got to have it. Boom, 64-yard touchdown. Against USC, you're up 1 possession late in the 4th quarter. Got to have a scoring drive go down to get Iowa on the road in tough conditions. They've shown that they can do that. Is there any worry on your end? I think I know the answer, but wanted to ask.
Well, sure. I do think that look, there's a lot of stuff for both of these teams. If we're talking about, because that I do that, I'll probably won't live as long as you, Spence, because I worry about a lot of stuff that I have zero control over. But
you haven't watched me watch a sporting event for my favorite team.
Yeah, I just
haven't seen it happen.
I just worry, right? I can come up with stuff. It's like, what are you worried about that for? I don't know. That's just what I do. Yeah, I think that's something that because look. Some of the biggest drives in this sense that Texas Tech has had this year, like the 2-minute drill, for example, which is kind of what you're talking about. Like, man, you don't have a lot of time. You got to get something on the scoreboard. They've been at the end of the first half or whenever the game kind of hung in the balance and you succeeded and then you put them away. And then it's like you kind of, you finished them off and those kinds of things. But the one time against Arizona State, that was Will Hammond, so it's a bit of a different argument.
Very.
But you had a big special teams play that flipped it. He ended up running in the end zone, and then your defense couldn't quite sustain it. You got Arizona State to a 4th and 1, and you're going to win if they don't convert it. And Sam Levitt kind of rolls out, and he's got a player in conflict, and he's got a target, and it's like he gets that player to commit to him, and then he dumps it off right over his head. They convert it. And then they would end up going to score a touchdown at the very end of the game and winning it. But, of course, that's a concern. But so is the long time sitting out and not playing. If I'm Oregon, so is losing both play callers to head jobs and the portal opening the next day. All this stuff, we can talk about all these things and worry about a million different things. Oregon having to fly cross country and play in how many different time zones. We know the NFL stats when you fly across multiple time zones, how bad it is for the team that's traveling. Does any of it matter? Hell, I don't know, man. But as far as stuff to worry about, I'm probably worried about other things more so than if it's a close game, if you can convert a 3rd and 8, or if you can make a key kick or something like that. I mean, I could come up with a whole bunch of other stuff that I'm probably a lot more worried about than that.
Well, clearly, you haven't been studying my Seahawks. We're like 11-2 in the Eastern Time Zone in the last couple of years. But anyway, this is a college football podcast. We're not gonna go into that. What we are going to get into is what I feel. I don't know how I did that. What I feel most confident about for Oregon, what Chris feels most confident about for Texas Tech, and how the other team will counter that. Still to come on this crossover edition of Locked On Ducks and Locked On Red Raiders. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Gametime. There's nothing like college football season. Tailgates, packed stadiums, being right there in the middle of it all, the energy, the bands, the moments you remember forever. But actually getting tickets, that part used to be frustrating with long queues, logins, prices jumping at checkout. That's why Gametime gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. So I've used Gametime several times over the last couple of years. Why? Because they give you everything you want. Great deals. You know what to expect. The process to get your ticket onto your phone is really easy. If you want to go to this Orange Bowl matchup on Thursday for a 12 Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific time kickoff, get there early, Duck fans, and Red Raider fans probably as well. If you want to be there, Gametime is indeed the place to go. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today.
Today's episode brought to you by Open Door Financial. And if you're a Red Raider balancing family and career, you've probably thought about your financial future, retirement, getting out of debt, leaving a legacy for your kids. But here's the thing, most financial advisors just trying to sell you something, hit a quota, or they only work with clients who have huge investment minimums. And that's not how it should be done. That's where Open Door Financial Advisors comes in, doing things differently. They were founded by a 2007 Texas Tech graduate right here in Lubbock, and they've spent over 15 years serving Red Raider families across the nation with one simple mission, helping you gain financial freedom and peace of mind, no matter where you're starting from. And Chris, you've got a long relationship with Open Door Financial Advisors, and that's the thing they really love doing most, being Red Raiders that help out Red Raiders.
Yeah, Derek Finley, man, he is one of us. He is a Texas Tech guy that really wants to help Texas Tech people, and it doesn't matter where you live either, because I think he's got clients from all over. But he is based in Lubbock, and it doesn't matter. But if you're trying to get out of debt, or you're trying to how do I get wealthy and secure my future by saving, he can handle anything in between, all of it. But yeah, check him out. But Derek's good people, and he's a Red Raider. He's been on this journey for many years as it relates to Texas Tech. So
he knows what you're going through.
Yes.
They work on a subscription-based fee-only model, which means they're never earning commissions on anything they're selling you. So there's no hidden agendas, no investment minimums, just straightforward advice. So whether, like Chris said, it's organizing investments, crushing debt, or building a legacy that goes beyond just money, they're ready to help families of all needs and resources, all while living by West Texas values, truth, and grit. So if you're ready to work toward your big horizon, visit Open Door FA. That's opendoorfa.com to connect with Open Door Financial Advisors. Honest guidance for Red Raider families who want to take care of what matters most.
So, Chris, coming into what, according to the sports books, is going to be FanDuel, of course, in particular, our official sponsor here at the network. They've got Oregon -1.5. They think this should be the most competitive game of the four. All the other ones are at least 6.5, which is kind of crazy to think about. We're going to see some blowouts in this round. And then we can talk about who deserved and didn't deserve to be in the playoff, and we can just continue this cycle over and over, and then they'll expand the playoff, and I'll lose my mind. Anyway, so bringing it back to this particular game.
Yes,
I think the biggest advantage for Oregon. Let me give an honorable mention here, like my close runner-up second. It's the balance on offense. There are so many different ways that Oregon can attack a Texas Tech defense. I think the biggest advantage is that Oregon's been in this spot before. And I know Texas Tech played the Big 12 championship game, and that was a big one, and beating BYU twice, that is not an easy thing to do. Oregon fans know what it's like to be on the other side of that particular equation. But in this game, you can't replicate. It's a little bit of the old Loki line. You know, Thanos says, if you consider failure experience, and he says, well, I consider experience. Oregon has been in this spot before, and Texas Tech does have the longer layoff of the two. I think Oregon put a little chip on their shoulder with how their defense performed in the second half, even though there were a lot of reserves in against James Madison. I think that's something Texas Tech is going to have to overcome. Like, if I were making my biggest keys to the game for Texas Tech, Chris, it would be getting off to a hot start, because I think Oregon, from just the mental readiness standpoint, I think they've got the edge, even though they're further from home.
Yeah, it's funny you say that about the stage and everything. I've been asked about that, leading up to this thing, and I think in a weird way, there's way more pressure on Oregon than Texas Tech here. I don't think
I agree with
that. Yeah, I don't think the stage. I mean, there was 25,000 more people in AT&T Stadium for the Big 12 title game than what this cute little stadium in Miami, Florida holds. Like, I just don't
I thought
know.
you were about to say the cute little stadium in Eugene. We were about to have a problem.
No. I mean, it's just a smaller venue, right? I mean,
yeah, it is.
Jerry World holds like 95 to 100 if you the standing room only and all this stuff. There was like 87,000 people. This thing only holds 65, and I'm assuming it will be full. But I really think the pressure was on Texas Tech in the Big 12 title game. This was the stated goal. The rest is now gravy. And I'm not saying that there won't be disappointment if it doesn't go further. But Oregon was here last year. Now it's like, okay, now what? Now what are you going to do? We've had the pain, and you got, I think if you were playing, say, Ohio State in the Rose Bowl, I would worry about that stage for Texas Tech. I genuinely would. If you were playing Georgia in Atlanta, or something, like, I would be like, oh boy, this is, but Oregon and playing them in Miami, just the setting and all of it. And granted, you just played Oregon 2 years ago. They were right here. Some of the same guys. I mean, Ben Roberts, that was his first career start, was against Bo Nix and Bucky Irving and the boys. So I get what you're saying. But I don't know if that's really a thing or not here in my opinion. Now, again, if you were to win this and say Bama were to beat Indiana, and you play Bama in Georgia or Bama in Atlanta, Georgia, I might be like, okay, well, it's a different feel to this. But I don't know if I'm buying into that one just yet. But I get the stage. It is meaningful.
I think where I'm coming at that particular argument from is how the coaching staff talks to their team, how they prepare for that sort of game, how to prepare for that long a layoff. And that's something Oregon really struggled with last year. Once the second half rolled around, well, Oregon won the second half for whatever that is worth, but they didn't look like the team that won the Big Ten and played really well until the second half. Oregon has done a really good job this year on both sides of the ball, frankly, of getting off to strong starts. And I think that putting your team in the right headspace for this sort of game, I think, is a really important mark for Texas Tech to hit. Because when you haven't played football in a while, it's just what it looked like. And look, the college football calendar is really dumb. It's dumb that they have to wait this long. They shouldn't have to. Oregon got screwed by it last year. They would love to have a little bit of payback to the college football gods in this particular spot.
And you shouldn't be talking about a program that's got their two primary play callers having to multitask leading up to this. It's all broken.
Ridiculous. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I don't disagree.
Yeah, there was an interesting piece over at ESPN folks should check out about how to manage those two different jobs. And I would say that, both, I understand if, Tech fans or people are wondering about, man, is that really a problem? At least against JMU, it clearly wasn't. The offense scored on each of its first 4 drives. They were up 34-6. First 5, they were up 34-6 at the half, and JMU had a couple plays here, a trick play and a long run, and that led to 2 field goals, and they didn't get into the end zone. So I think from a game plan standpoint, both coordinators were pretty sharp. I want to go back to a point you raised earlier, though, about there being more pressure on Oregon in this game. I totally agree, because Oregon has been in this spot more, even though they've only been in the 12-team playoff once. They were in the 14 playoff, of course, played for the national championship that year, wearing white jerseys and gray pants. I don't know if I love that. Anyway, so because that's what they're wearing in this game, of course. But I totally agree. Texas Tech is new kid on the block. The instant success of winning the Big 12, doing it in the manner in which they did, I definitely think from that standpoint, there's less pressure on the Texas Tech program. I think that applies more to fans than it does to players and coaches, if you get what I mean. But I agree with your point.
Yeah, I see that, because there's going to be a point in this game where say it's 4th and 2 and you're at the 7-yard line. Like, I kick it, I go for it. I mean, and it could be like a decision that
that depends on a lot of factors.
Well, but you know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
We're in another setting, in another game. It's like, yeah, let's just do this. It's fine. But no, this will feel differently from that standpoint. And it's funny you mentioned that about a while ago, because I'm curious myself on what they may show Dante Moore, Sheil Wood, the defensive coordinator here, what they may show him and what they've cooked up and all that. I bet it's not a lot. I don't see them just reinventing kind of what got them here. And the beauty of what they've been able to do is be able to rush 4. And you did it. No offense to Isaiah World or Alex Harkey, but if we're talking draft status and all that, the Utah tackles are clearly better than what Oregon has. Yeah. And these two had their way with them. There was no run game to be had. There was no, and so but again, things change. I just wonder what you will actually show a bunch of different looks and all that, because you don't have this much time off and go, let's just keep doing the same thing. We'll just rinse and repeat. That's not exactly how it works. But I'm as curious as anybody on what you see with the time off and how many different looks. But this is, I'll say this is easily the best team that Texas Tech has played all year. Okay, and one thing that I do worry about and is you've mentioned all the various weapons, and this is maybe the best skill player that Texas Tech will have seen all year in Kenyon Sadiq. And obviously they saw Jordan Tyson, who I think is supposed to be a first-round pick and all that stuff. But see, Jordan Tyson, he had some help. Sadiq has a lot behind him and around him and all that stuff. And so do you get a matchup that you like? Do you get maybe Brendan Jordan or a Ben Roberts isolated in a one-on-one situation, and maybe you hit a play, because David Bailey cannot win his matchup half the time, and you're not going to notice it as much. But when one of these safeties or corners or linebackers get matched up on the wrong guy, it's like, oh no, this isn't going well. So we'll see, but it should be a really fun game, and I do think this is going to be similar to the Indiana-Oregon game from a scorer standpoint, I just think points will be at a premium. I really do. I don't see anybody scoring over 30, 31, 34. I think that would be tops, and I bet the other guys in the 20s or teens. But I think that this will be a bit of a grind there for a period of time. And I do generally wonder about the two coordinators. Everybody can tell me till they're blue in the face they're locked in, there's been no change. Like, if that's true, you're doing a disservice to your future employer. I mean, you just are.
I mean, they've said all the right things. I do still see your point. I'll also note Dan Lanning got announced in December of 2021 as Oregon's next head football coach, and then coordinated his way to a national championship. So for insight on how to manage this situation, it's about as good of a guy that you could have to lean on for Will Stein and Tosh Lupoy.
And that was at a time before the portal opened the very next day. And there's multiple coaches.
True.
There's multiple coaches going with these two coordinators.
I think everybody that doesn't have a full-time role on Oregon staff is going to be leaving it. And that's what happens. That's what happens. Good for those guys.
The Texas Tech offensive coordinator's brother is one of them that's going with Coach Stein.
Right.
Cutter Leftwich.
Yeah.
Cutter Leftwich is going.
Yep.
And so it's just been interesting, some of the conversations on what you're doing and how you're focusing and all the things. But yeah, I mean, it's just, and I know people have managed this before. It's just a lot to ask. I mean, you saw the meme, John Summerall Like he's like, I got 2 phones, 2 jobs, and
Yeah.
2 hours of sleep, right?
He had this graphic made where he was half Florida, half Tulane. Man, he handled it like nobody
which is what
I've seen
Mac
before.
Leftwich's, Mac and Cutter Leftwich's mom will be wearing something that's half Texas Tech, half Oregon.
We've seen it. We've seen it before. The Warriors played the Blazers a long time ago, and Seth Curry was on the Blazers. And
the Kelsey brothers.
Yep,
Brothers.
it's come out before. When we get back, Chris will tell me what he thinks Texas Tech's biggest advantage is, and we'll talk about how Oregon responds to that. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. And this game that we are talking about right now, Oregon, Texas Tech, is Ducks minus 1.5 on FanDuel. If you think that is blasphemous to make the Big 12 champion an underdog, Texas Tech plus 1.5 is right there. It's calling your name. It's begging you to go on and be on that side. If you believe that Oregon is going to do to Texas Tech what Ohio State did to Oregon last year, you probably think Oregon minus 1.5 is the easiest thing you've ever seen in your life. However you're feeling, whatever else you want to get into, FanDuel's got you covered. Before tip-off, when you want to go in the NBA direction, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Chris, what do you think is Texas Tech's biggest advantage in this game?
Is it crazy for me to say line play in the trenches?
At least a little. At least a little.
Because,
I'll let you go first. I'll respond.
Yeah, and I'm not. I don't know if anybody has some heavy advantage in this game at all. I just don't know if that exists. I do feel like that this defensive line, whether you watch what they've done this year, you listen to NFL people, doesn't matter. They are legit, and at worst, they won't suck. Right? So
that's
like
the spirit.
Yeah, like if they have a bad day, it's still going to be pretty good, I guess is my point. And I think that there's depth, there's speed, there's physicality, right? I mean, they can kind of, you want to throw it to the perimeter, they're fast enough to do it. You want to try to run it up the gut, you've got an all-world middle linebacker and Jacob Rodriguez that can plug it up, and Lee Hunter's really good, all that stuff.
Yeah,
right?
but Oregon's got a guy whose name is World at left tackle, so what does that matter?
Yeah, that's right. Who was, I was getting these or seeing these visit lists last year, back in December, and yeah, Isaiah World and Alex Harkey's names were certainly in the mix as far as what Texas Tech was trying to do with some of their portal, trying to figure out what that was going to be. So I think we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
And I wonder, okay, so this is where, because the Oregon defensive line is very good.
It is.
I think but what they don't do like better than a lot of teams is like, get to the quarterback. I mean, they're not just terrible at it, but that's not where they make their living is creating sacks and all the things. And I just wonder if you'll be able to, whether it's an advantage or whether you'll be able to hold up enough to where Barron will have a healthier Morton will have some time to maneuver around and make some plays. Because he doesn't make many mistakes. Now, he has thrown some passes that should have been intercepted that weren't. But I'll be really interested to see kind of what that chess match looks like, because we've already talked about the trenches on the other side.
Right.
More in Oregon's run game against what Texas Tech does. But I'm curious as the flip side. And do you have any success running it if you're Texas Tech? I think their run game has been very underrated, and it was supposed to be Quentin Joyner that was supposed to be leading this pack.
And then he got hurt before the year.
That's right. And Yeah, but imagine these two running backs being back next year and adding Quentin Joyner to it, which is what the plan is.
Yeah, so Oregon also has a running back tandem they're excited to get back next year and the year after that because it's a couple of true freshmen and Jordan Davison and D'Air Hill who have been great, and then you have the veteran Noah Whittington leading the way as well. I think that for Oregon's offensive line, which for the second straight year was a finalist for the Joe Moore Award given to the best offensive line in all of college football, I think both units have been worthy of that recognition. I do think they've been slightly different. I like this unit better than last year for the Ducks. I think they are much better in the run blocking department. I think last year's group was a better collection of pass blockers. And I by no stretch think that Alex Harkey and Isaiah World have struggled. But when I envision in my head, like, how could Oregon's defensive or offensive line get beat by the Tech defensive line, first thing I envision is Davey Uli, who has struggled in the run game this year, but is an elite pass protector. He'll start at guard for the Ducks. And the second thing that I've seen at times is Alex Harkey doesn't always get out to the edge. Like the speed rush of Romello Height against Alex Harkey at right tackle is one of the sicko extra level detail matchups to watch. Not just those two, but when he gets to the outside. I think Harkey's protected his inside very well, but sometimes he doesn't quite get all the way out when a guy tries to go around him. But I think the Oregon offensive line played very well against James Madison, looked healthy, which was important because they were banged up at the end of the year. And the way that they've played this season, I do think it's a huge matchup to go against the Texas Tech defensive line. I've got a solid amount of confidence that they will at least make it a wash. But what I'm curious to see, Chris, is what can David Bailey and Romello Height do in the run game? Because Oregon is going to throw a lot of different looks at you running the football. They are not just going to line up Mario Cristobal style. Here's, pistol I formation, hand it off, and we're just going to out physical you. No, they are creative, clever, and they will move the eyes in anticipation of defensive linemen a lot with their different sets and the three running backs that I mentioned. So I think that matchup is fascinating. On the other side, for Oregon's defensive line, you're right that the sack numbers are not blowing anybody out of the water. I think a part of that, not all of it, certainly. Mateo Uyunglele should have more sacks than he does. A part of that is by design. I think Oregon comes into a lot of games, and perhaps Baron Morton's health is going to factor in to kind of how much they cut the defensive ends loose. I think they've come into a lot of games, like the Washington one, for instance, and tried to take away the quarterback run game. And they're saying, we don't want you to lose rush line discipline and go after the quarterback and get him at all costs because he's a statue. That guy can move, and we want you to just kind of, what do they call it, mud rush, basically, where you just kind of squeeze the pocket down. Mm-hmm. I think that's why that's part of the reason. It's definitely not all of it.
That's fair.
Yeah. I think that's a part of the reason that the sack numbers are low. But why don't you wrap today's show with your thoughts on how Bailey and Height, who are such good pass rushers, how they perform against the run?
Yeah, like if you're talking about like somebody busting a gap or getting confused, okay, I think that's a legit, because these guys will sit in a room and say, okay, let's overload this side.
You think it's a legit concern for Texas Tech?
I'm saying let's shift it around and all that. But if you're like, in other words, will somebody maybe bust a gap and Oregon take advantage of it? That's certainly plausible. What I don't worry about is if you want to try to run it to the perimeter or throw it with short, quick passes in the quick game, them involved in whether it's tosses or sweeps or whatever. Now again, if there's a missed assignment or somebody but like those guys have been, it would be very abnormal if they were to struggle in that area. They just haven't done that all year. And that was kind of what, if I'm being honest, that's what, when they first got here, I think that was kind of or are these guys just, pass rushing specialists? Like, what's this going to look like? And I think they've been challenged with that. And I think that the NFL folks have seen, no, they're not just that. And that's because that's what everybody's tried to do. Like, we're not going to run it up the middle because it's not working. So let's go wide. Let's try to confuse you. And much like a lot of the Big Ten teams kind of play that Midwestern style of football, there's a lot of that in the Big 12 too, where it's just like shift, 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 shift. Eye candy over here going that way. I mean, and
then they just line up and run power.
Bingo. Yep, it's window dressing.
And Texas Tech's defense, correct me if I'm wrong, against the run, number 1 in the country.
I believe that you're right there. 68 yards a game is what they've given up. And again, you can get them, and they have been gotten. Avery Johnson, the quarterback for Kansas State, got him a few times early in the game. Okay, before they'd kind of adjusted, he's elite level fast, like arguably the fastest player I saw all year. And there was a few QB looks, but it's like once they played that card and you kind of adjusted, he didn't do a thing running it or throwing it really the rest of the game. But they're not perfect, but people just haven't had, now granted, I think this is a bit of a different set of skill players than what they've seen up to this point too. So, but that's where I'm fascinated by.
Yeah.
It's really, can Oregon run it and can Texas Tech stop it? And I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I think even then, like Washington took away Oregon's run more than any team has all season, and Oregon still went up and down the field. Now they stalled in the red zone, had to settle for field goals. Yeah. Back to that hypothetical you laid out earlier, 4th and 2 at the 7. Dan Lanning took a lot of field goals in Seattle, won the football game. Might depend on a lot of different things. But we'll wrap it there for today. He's Chris Level of Locked On Texas Tech. I'm Spencer McLaughlin of Locked On Ducks. We appreciate everyone listening. See you next time. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.